In this video, I'm going to show you how to do knife pleats, which is a common sewing pleating technique that is useful in garment construction. So the first phase of doing knife pleats is a lot of measuring and marking. So you're going to need a ruler and two different colors of marking tools. I will be using red and blue. If you're in my class, these colors reflect the colors given on the handout that I will also give you for this. I find that handout to be the world's most confusing pleat handout ever. So I'm just going to show you how to do it in this video, and we can use that handout if that works better for you. So the red color of pen we're going to use to show our main lines, and the blue color we're going to use to show our dashed fold lines. And I'm just going to start marking. So what you want to do is, I'm placing my ruler about a ½ inch down, and I'm going to mark a line at 1 inch, and then again at 3 inches in my red, and then I'm going to mark a line in blue at 2 inches. Then I'm going to turn my pen the long way, or my ruler the long way, and I'm going to lengthen out these marks a little bit. I'm making the red one a solid line. And I'm going to make the blue one a dashed line because it is the sneaky little inside line that shows us where the middle of our fold should be. Okay. I'm going to repeat that process quite a few times, but just really quick so that you can see what this is for and why we're doing all these extra lines. We're ultimately going to fold this line to this line, making a knife pleat. And so we're going to need to do this a couple of times so we can have a nice row of knife pleats. But that is the goal with all these different kinds of markings. So now I'm going to repeat what I just did. Going 1 inch and 3 inches with the red and 2 inches with the blue, and I'm going to continue that down this piece of fabric. If you're in my class, you'll be getting an 18-inch long sample, so you should be able to fit 6 of these pleats because they each take 3 inches of fabric to make a 1-inch pleat because of the way that it folds up, gobbles up extra fabric. If you're not in my class and you're coming to this video to learn how to do knife pleats in general, that is totally welcome. Welcome to this video. You can apply these same techniques, however, on a real garment, you don't want to use pen like I'm using. You want to use a marking tool that is going to blend in to your fabric, and also you probably don't want to draw full long lines. One handy trick for accomplishing tidy little pleats without big marks is using a Frixion pen that heats away. Nope, that's not it. I don't have one here, but Frixion erasable pens, they vanish with heat, and so irons take them away. You also can go through and hand thread trace your pleat lines. That is especially useful if you're doing this on a fabric where you absolutely don't want anything bleeding through to the outside. So for example, say I'm making a beautiful white dress. I don't want to be able to see all of these lines like I can see through this fabric. If you get close, you can see the little red bleeding through. We don't want that. But on a muslin sampler, where you're demonstrating to your teacher that you know how to do knife pleats, we are totally cool with seeing some lines. My pen is not enjoying this, though, I can say that much. Okay, once I've got all of my red lines marked, I'm going to go back through and do everything again. Well, not everything. I'm going to do the other ones, the blue dashed lines, with my blue marking tool. Now, obviously, you don't need to be doing these in red and blue specifically, but for the sake of this video, you know that the blue ones are the interior folded parts, and the red lines are the ones we're trying to match up with each other. Okie dokie. So now that I've got everything marked, I've got a lot of 1-inch pleats, each of which take 3 lines. On my first one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to number them. For the sake of you guys being able to see really well, I'm going to number them in purple because that's fun. It's a fun combination. So this is line number 1. This blue dashed line is number 2. And this line is number 3. Now you can repeat this pattern mentally over and over again because I've got lots of pleats marked here. But for right now, we just need lines 1, 2, and 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to take line number 1, we're going to jump it over top of line number 2 so that it can lay on top of line number 3. And it's hiding both of them completely. You can't see lines 2 or 3, and that's what we want. And then I'm going to stick a pin in it to hold it there. And I'm going to repeat that process for each of my pleats. I'm jumping line 1 over line 2 to land on line 3. And then I'm pinning it. And you'll notice with each pleat, I'm starting over with the next set of 3. I'm not trying to reuse lines here and try to line things up, which is something that can be confusing with pleats. When you've got this many lines, it can be hard to keep track of what's what, which is why we're doing color coding. And I'm just jumping these lines over top of each other. That's all this is. This is an elaborate game of hopscotch with math. Everybody's favorite. That's what everybody craves. Okay. And so once you have gotten all of your pleats pinned, which we're getting near to that point, we're going to iron everything first, and then we're going to baste them down, and then we're done with this sample. I'm actually going to have you stitch it for the sample, but if you're doing this in a real garment, you'll baste it down because a real seam will come along and encapsulate these. There we go. Okay, knife pleats. Everybody's favorite kind of pleat. Legitimately. It only gets worse from here. These pleats are the best. Okay, so this is what your pinned knife pleat should look like from this side, and from this side, which would be your right side, which is just beautiful. Look at these little lovely lines. This is a great pleat to use when you are trying to do anything. A knife pleat can be anything, but skirts, especially skirts, if you're going for that cheerleader look, those are knife pleats. Those are really crisp knife pleats. Yeah, I like using knife pleats in a lot of things. Someday you'll have to ask me about my really misguided endeavor in knife pleats for a draping class I took here at Kent, in which, for a draping class, I had to design a bodice from the 1840s, well, whole dress. But the bodice, I was like, what if I put, like, 30 knife pleats going across the chest of this thing at a diagonal? And everyone said, yeah, that's a good idea. And by that I mean no one said that, and it was, it turned out, and that's what matters, but it was pain. Okay, so I just pressed all of these pleats from the top. You'll notice my pen is water soluble, so it did smear a little bit, and also my iron is steaming over there. But that doesn't matter, because what matters is that these pleats are pressed, and I'm ready to head over to my sewing machine. Okay, over at my sewing machine, I'm ready to stitch down my pleats. So one thing that I always like to do before sewing any pleats is I like to pin them in a lot more places than they're currently pinned. This is because you want to give it the easiest chance possible of going through the sewing machine without getting all bunched up. And so at the edge of each pleat, front and back edge, so like this edge and this edge, I'm putting a pin, pretty much as close to the edge as possible as I can get. So like right there, that's going there, because I want each of these edges to be really secure and not getting stuck and folding over awkwardly on me when it goes through the sewing machine. And so I'm just making sure everything is really well pinned. There's one more there that I need to do. And now that I've got lots of pins in this, I'm going to machine baste it together. I'm machine basting my pleats into place. I'm going to do this at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. If you're doing this on a real garment, it should specify where your stitch line is. And generally, when I'm basting pleats into a real thing, I like to do it slightly above where my stitch line will be, so as to limit bulk and not be putting all of the seams stacked directly on top of each other, which is a recurring theme in these videos. If you watch many of them, you'll notice we're doing a lot of things to try to limit bulk in seams. Okay, I'm stitching slowly, making sure everything is as flat as possible. Going into the machine, pulling out pins. Okie dokie. And then I reach the end, I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to break my threads off. And this is what your finished pleats should look like from the front and the back. So you'll notice everything is a really nice crisp rectangle. And there's extra material in here that's giving it some fullness and body and the classic pleated shape that we were going for.